In the heart of the Egboland, beyond the thick, dense forests, where the tall trees whispered ancient secrets to the wind, there lay a village hidden from the world, Ukutu. Surrounded by towering hills and swaths of emerald green vegetation, it was a place untouched by time. Yet, despite its outward beauty, a dark shadow hung over the village, a shadow that had haunted its people for generations. For as long as anyone could remember, a strange phenomenon plagued Ukutu. Every 30 years, a child was born under the light of the midnight moon, their arrival heralded by a disturbing sign. This child bore a glowing mark, a mysterious symbol that appeared on their forehead, shimmering faintly in the dark. The villagers called these children the Marked Ones, and they were believed to be both a blessing and a curse. The curse was simple. On the 15th birthday of the Marked One, the whispering shadows would come. The legends told of ancient spirits, dark, vengeful forces that roamed the village, casting their eerie whispers into the wind. These shadows, it was said, were the spirits of ancient gods, displeased with the living, demanding the sacrifice of the Marked One. If the sacrifice was not made, the shadows would consume the village, dragging it into eternal darkness. It was this curse that haunted the people of Ukutu, but there was more to the legend than the villagers cared to admit. Beneath their fear, beneath their desperate attempts to appease the shadows, there was a terrible secret, a secret that would soon come to light. Ikem, the current Marked One, was unlike the others before him. At 14, he was quiet and introspective, with sharp, watchful eyes that seemed to see more than they let on. He had always been an outsider, a boy who avoided the company of others. The glowing mark on his forehead had been visible since birth, and though it was faint, it always attracted wary stares. The villagers whispered behind his back. Some believed that Ikem would be the one to save them from the curse, while others feared he was doomed to perish, as all the Marked Ones before him had. Ikem's life was one of isolation, but it was not the villagers' stares or whispers that disturbed him. It was the dreams, vivid, haunting visions that had plagued his sleep for the past few months. In these dreams, he stood in a dark forest, surrounded by shadows, their voices low and menacing. They whispered to him, urging him to come closer, to join them in the darkness. The dreams always ended the same way, with the shadows consuming him, pulling him into the abyss. As Ikem's 15th birthday approached, the village grew restless. Strange things began to happen. Crops withered overnight, animals disappeared from their pens, and a chill settled over the land. The whispers in the wind grew louder, more insistent, as though the shadows were drawing nearer. Fear gripped the villagers. They knew what was coming. The whispering shadows would soon come for Ikem, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. On the night before his birthday, Ikem had the most vivid dream yet. In it, he stood before a large, ancient cave hidden deep in the forest. Inside, the whispers were louder than ever, and as he stepped closer, the shadows revealed themselves. Figures ghostly and ethereal, their eyes hollow, their faces twisted in agony. Suddenly, one of the shadows stepped forward, and in a voice that was both sorrowful and angry, it spoke, "We were like you once, marked, chosen." Ikem awoke with a start, his heart pounding in his chest. The words of the shadow echoed in his mind. What did they mean? Who were these shadows? Why had they been chosen? Determined to find answers, Ikem left his hut in the dead of night, making his way through the forest. His footsteps were silent on the clay soil, and the trees seemed to part for him as though they knew where he was headed. After hours of walking, he came upon the cave from his dream. It was real, a massive, looming structure carved into the side of a hill, its entrance dark and foreboding. Ikem hesitated for only a moment before stepping inside. The cave was cold and damp, the air thick with the weight of centuries-old secrets. As Ikem ventured deeper, the whispers grew louder, and soon he saw them, the shadows. They appeared as they had in his dream, ghostly figures, their hollow eyes watching him, their whispers filling the space. "Who are you?" Ikem demanded, his voice trembling. One of the shadows stepped forward, the same one that had spoken in his dream. "We are the sacrificed," it said, its voice filled with anguish, "the children born with the mark. We were like you, Ikem. We were promised to the shadows, offered up by the village to appease the gods, but the gods did not take us. We were betrayed, our souls trapped here, in the darkness, forever cursed to wander." Ikem's heart raced. The shadows were not gods. They were the spirits of the marked ones, the children who had been sacrificed over the centuries. They had been betrayed by the village, condemned to an eternity of torment. "But why?" Ikem asked, his voice breaking. "Why would the village do this?" "The village feared us," the shadow replied. "They believed the mark was a curse, that we would bring ruin upon them. So, they offered us to the shadows, thinking it would save them. But they were wrong." Ikem felt a surge of anger and sorrow. He had been told his entire life that he was destined to save the village or be sacrificed for its survival, but now he realized that the village had been sacrificing its children out of fear and ignorance. The shadows were not the enemy. The village was. As Ikem stood in the cave, surrounded by the whispering spirits of the marked ones, he knew he had a choice to make. He could join the shadows, allowing his soul to be consumed by their anger and sorrow, or he could find a way to break the cycle, to free the village from its curse and release the spirits from their torment. But time was running out. His 15th birthday was only hours away, and the villagers were already preparing for the ritual that would condemn him to the same fate as the shadows before him. On the day of Ikem's 15th birthday, the village was eerily quiet. The villagers gathered in the center of town, their faces pale with fear. They believed the shadows would come for Ikem that night, as they had come for every marked one before him. But Ikem had other plans. As the sun set and the whispers of the shadows filled the air, Ikem stood before the villagers, his mark glowing brightly on his forehead. The villagers watched in awe and terror as the shadows emerged from the forest, their ghostly forms swirling around Ikem. "The curse is not real," Ikem shouted, his voice echoing through the village. "The shadows are not gods, they are the souls of the children you have sacrificed." The villagers gasped in horror, their eyes wide with disbelief. But before they could react, the shadows spoke. "We have been betrayed, but we do not seek revenge, we seek freedom." In that moment, Ikem realized what he had to do. He raised his arms to the sky, the mark on his forehead glowing even brighter. With a single command, he called upon the power of the whispering shadows, channeling their anger and sorrow into a blinding light that engulfed the village. When the light faded, the shadows were gone, their souls finally at peace. The village of Ukutu was free. Ikem stood alone in the village square, the mark on his forehead now gone. The villagers, still in shock, slowly began to realize what had happened. They had been living in fear of a curse that had never existed, sacrificing their own children out of ignorance and terror. As they gathered around Ikem, their faces filled with guilt and shame, Ikem spoke. "The shadows are gone," he said softly. "But we must never forget what happened here. We must learn from our mistakes and ensure that no child is ever sacrificed again." The villagers nodded in agreement, their hearts heavy with the weight of their actions. And as the night descended upon Ukutu, the village began to heal. But the memory of the whispering shadows would never fade.